Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Metarealism. Today, I'm going to talk about a subject which I suppose might be regarded as controversial. And I would not do this podcast unless I were an autistic, because the podcast is going to be about some things that might, I think, annoy some autistics, that some autistics might find to be offensive, maybe. I don't know. I don't think anybody should, but what I will be dealing with is pretty much factual knowledge, followed by my own speculation on that knowledge. And so I should make it clear right off the bat that I realize I will be speculating. I'm not an expert on autism, other than being an autistic myself. If you watched some of my previous videos, you know about my life, you know about the things I've been through, you know about how I've gone through my life's journey, starting out as a very, I'm not sure if you would say poorly functional autistic, because I certainly was not in the camp of those who sit and bang their heads against the wall. That is such a tragedy to me when I've seen that. And I certainly did not do that. But by the same token, did I function well? No. So, what is a well functioning? What is a poorly functioning autistic? I think a lot of that is subjective. But I know that I was not certainly as well functioning as a child, even as a teenager, as I am now, as I am close to turning 68 years old at the end of this month. So for that reason, I feel justified in making this podcast, and I hope it does not bother anybody. If it does, I'm sorry, but it is just my own personal view. So toss it into the garbage can if you like. But these are things I've been thinking about for a long time, trying to understand the relationship between autism and capitalism. And I think I've come up with a kind of, I guess you might call it a preliminary answer. I don't know if it is possible at this point to come up with anything more than that. I am not a neuroscientist or a biologist. I am a sociologist and a historian. So I really don't have the qualifications to make any definitive comments on autism. So what I will be saying is based on two things. First, my own experience living my whole life as an autistic. In other words, my life's journey as an autistic. And second, my own reading, my own personal reading, which I realize is not necessarily of academic quality, although I have read some academic articles on autism. So those two things, my own experience and my own reading, will guide what I am about to say. But please, don't take what I'm saying as being offensive. I hope you don't, because I am not trying to offend anybody. I am an autistic, and I'm simply sharing my own point of view. So let me start out. The reason why I am wearing these glasses is because I wanted to begin by reading a list of the 10 countries in the world with the highest rates of autism. So here goes. This is from number 1 to number 10. The United Kingdom, Sweden, Japan, the United States, the Netherlands, Ireland, Brunei, Canada, Singapore, Andorra. The majority of those countries that I read are countries in the first world. Now let me take off my glasses because I don't need them anymore, and I will give you my own personal commentary on what I just said. And again, please, I would ask you, don't take what I'm saying as an attempt to offend anybody, because obviously, since I am an autistic, I would just be offending myself. The question I would ask is this: why is it that most of those countries are first world countries, capitalist countries? Why? In my opinion, and it's only my opinion, autism may be seen as one of the contradictions of capitalism. Now, there are many contradictions of capitalism. Imperialism is number one, but then there is racism, sexism, there is ageism, there is ableism, and so on. Many contradictions. And all of them, I think, are caused by the capitalist world system. Now, what many people have noted is this: that the rates of autism are going up. Nobody really knows why that is. There are loads of speculations on why it's going up, but realistically, it is impossible to know why in any kind of definitive way, because no one exactly knows what causes autism. So if you don't know what causes it, you can't know why it's going up. Some people think it's pollutants. Some people think it's diet. There are all sorts of speculations for why the rates of autism are going up. My view is entirely different. As someone who sees autism as one of the contradictions of capitalism, in my view, the reason why autism is going up is because the capitalist world system is deteriorating. And those most vulnerable to that deterioration are its victims. And autists are certainly among those victims. Now, does that mean that I see myself as a victim personally? No. I do not think of myself as being victimized by anyone or anything. Although as a child, I was certainly a victim. I was a victim of abuse by other children. I was a victim of physical abuse by my father, and I was a victim of emotional abuse by my mother. That was all at a time when there was no such concept as child abuse. It was punishment and bullying. I was punished by my parents, and I was bullied by other children. But it was not conceived of as being abuse. That came later. And when it came later, it was very controversial, especially among Republicans, who argued that the next thing you know, children are going to be suing their parents. Obviously, that was just panicking. That never happened. Children have not been suing their parents. Maybe there have been one or two here and there, but is that a major problem? Of course not. I knew that when I heard people discussing it. I knew people were simply trying to panic the rest of the population into rejecting the concept of child abuse and to see it simply as punishment and bullying. But as someone who has gone through it, as someone who has experienced that punishment and bullying, that child abuse, I know better. And I knew better then as well. Capitalism is on the decline rapidly. There are some people who are trying to prop it up. The World Bank, for example, has been trying to prop up capitalism. There are other agencies around the world that have been trying to prop up capitalism. But nonetheless, capitalism is a dying system. How much longer it has to go, no one knows. But I think that I can say with a fair degree of confidence that however long it has to go is not that long. Meaning, you can only prop up a dying system for so long. Eventually, it will expire. And I think that is the case with capitalism as well. So when I look at the increasingly high rates of autism, I do not blame them on diet. I do not blame them on pollution. I do not blame them on climate change, which actually have been some explanations offered for the increasingly high rates of autism. I blame them on capitalism. What could be a greater contradiction of capitalism than the loss of empathy, intersubjectivity, and love? Things that are factors required for our survival as human beings. We cannot live as human beings without love, empathy, and intersubjectivity. Well, I guess we can live in a sense, but we are really just walking corpses. In order to function effectively in this world as Homo sapiens, we need to be human beings. In other words, we need to have humanity. We need to have empathy, intersubjectivity, and love. All of those things, which in a sense are only one thing, are appearing to be a dying characteristic. We don't see that much love anymore. In place of love, we see hate of all kinds. In place of intersubjectivity, we see egotism, the subjectivity of self. In place of empathy, we see apathy and hatred. So the world, as it is functioning right now, has multiple contradictions. And those contradictions, I believe, are caused by the capitalist world system. Again, I realize that what I am saying is unusual, is not common. I would not be surprised, although I don't know, if I am the first person to think of it. What I can say is that if I am not, I have not read it or heard it from anyone else. I have never come across the writing or speaking of another person which explained autism as a contradiction of capitalism. And yet, in my view, that is precisely what it is. And that is precisely why we are seeing an increase in autism, which otherwise would seem to be inexplicable. That's not what usually happens to psychiatric disorders. They don't usually experience a sudden increase. They usually stay about the same, to my understanding. And again, I am not a psychiatrist or a clinical psychologist. I'm speaking now as a pure layman. But what could be more of a contradiction of capitalism than to rob people of their empathy, of their hearts, of their ability to relate in any kind of meaningful sense with other human beings? Now, again, my comments are, I realize, odd, unusual, maybe dead wrong. If you think I am dead wrong and you say so, I will not be offended, because I myself realize that I might be dead wrong. So it would not bother me. You can say what you like. But again, remember, I am an autistic. So in making these comments about autistics, I am obviously not trying to insult autistics. If so, I would be trying to insult myself, which I would never do. That wouldn't make much sense, would it? I mean, no matter how low a person's self-esteem might be, people generally don't go around insulting themselves. That would be rather odd, I think. So no, I'm being honest. This is what I feel. I might be right. I might be wrong, or maybe somewhere in between. Who knows? But I do feel the way I feel. Meaning I do see autism, the theft of the human heart, as one of many contradictions of capitalism. It is not the major one, which again is imperialism, but it may be among the most devastating ones. I know it certainly has for me. When as a child I wondered, why is it that I have no heart? Why is it that I cannot feel what other people are feeling? Why is it that I don't love anyone? Literally anyone. People that I should have loved, people that I love now. But when it really mattered, when they were really going out of their way to help me, I expressed no love in return. And not because I wanted to do that. It was not a choice. I never chose to be autistic. It's a neurological trait. It's a part of my brain. In my own case, specifically, it might be related to my left frontal lobes. Why do I say that? Because during EEGs, what is repeatedly found is that I have an abnormality in my left frontal lobes. I don't know what that means. It is something that my psychiatrist always made note of, and he thought that it had something to do with my schizophrenia childhood type. Again, the old name for autism. Was he right? I don't know. Maybe. Whatever. Whether he was right, whether he was wrong. That is how things appear to me right now. That as one among millions who has been robbed of love, of empathy, of the human heart by autism, as one who is a communist and a socialist, who believes that capitalism has many contradictions and that those contradictions are destroying us both individually and collectively. And so when I put those two things together, I come to the conclusion, however tentative, that there is a connection not only between my autism and the decline of the capitalist world system, but between autism in general, the rise of autism, the ever more rapid rise of autism and the decline of the capitalist world system. Again, what I would like, it is sad to me that this has not happened yet, that no one has responded with any substance, with only one or two exceptions to my podcasts. And so I ask of you, please, please write a comment. I don't care whether you agree with me or violently disagree with me, as long as you don't attack me. But agreement, disagreement, who cares? Who cares? Because I know myself that I could very easily be wrong. I know that. I am acutely aware of my own fallibility as a human being, my great fallibility as a human being. So I would not be surprised at all if I'm totally off the wall in what I'm saying. But again, I can reflect on this myself, which I have for a while. But it's not the same as getting feedback from others, hearing what other people think about what I am saying. I would particularly like to hear back from other autistics or autists, alternate names for the same condition, especially other autistics or autists, but not exclusively. I would be happy to hear back from anyone, literally, just to know that someone is listening to the sound of my voice. And whether you agree with me or not, that you have given some consideration to what I am saying. Whether you think that there is a possibility that my autism was, in addition to any kind of neurological etiology or causation, also facilitated by a declining capitalist world system. I'm not dismissing the neurological component at all. What I'm saying or suggesting is that the neurology behind autism has been accelerated by the decline of the capitalist world system. So please, I ask you again, comment on this podcast. Whatever you have to say, and I will read it. For the time being, this has been Mark, by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Metarealism. Have a pleasant day, and an even better day tomorrow.